welcome to the Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections for Friday, October the 1st. Up for you today, I've got 8 selections, and I also have some bonus information at the end of this. So you'll get 8 selections plus 4 bonus games where I give you some interesting tidbits on not official plays, but bonus plays as well. Pretty deep weekend, pretty exciting weekend for college football. Disappointing week last week for the Phil Steele Plus Tour, but still a winning record on the year. And this could be a very big week this week. We'll see how it plays out. Let's start and take a look at our first official matchup of the day. And we're going to look at North Carolina against Duke. I've got Duke lined up here on the left. These are, of course, the team pages on philsteele.com. Plus, I should say, Phil Steele Plus. And here's North Carolina on the right. Now, the thing I want to point out here, Duke is 3-1, and they're actually better yards per game than North Carolina. They're plus 125 yards per game. North Carolina's plus 124 yards per game. So it seems pretty simple. Duke's the better team, right? Well, the average game grades that we have out here, they not only reflect the score of the game, but also the yardage of the game and, very importantly, the opponent played. So let's take a look at Duke's schedule. They've played Charlotte, North Carolina A&T, Northwestern, and Kansas. That's the number 122 schedule. Meanwhile, North Carolina's played Virginia Tech, Georgia State, Virginia, and Georgia Tech. That's the number 11 schedule in the country. So a much tougher schedule, and that's factored into the average game grades. The average game grades right here show that North Carolina is 112.9. Duke is 93.8. So that is saying that the average game grades say North Carolina should win this game by 22.9. So that's a nice start there for the North Carolina minus 19.5. The other thing I want to point out, North Carolina is a much better team at home than they are on the road. You look at the fact that this year at home they're beating teams by 31 points per game. They're actually losing by 15 points per game on the road. Last year they won their home games by 15 points per game. They were plus 142 yards per game. And so under Mac Brown, they do extremely well at home. Also, the other factor is off a loss. Let's take a look at Mac Brown off a loss here. And we'll go back over here. They lose this game to Pitt. They bury Mercer 56-7. So that's 1-0 against the spread off a loss. They lose to Notre Dame. They bury Western Carolina. They lose to Virginia. They bury Duke 56-24. They lost to Florida State. They buried NC State by 27. And they lost to Virginia Tech, and they buried Georgia State 59-17. So off a loss, these guys are winning their games by 27, 32, 40, and 42 points. So, and North Carolina, by the way, as mentioned, they're better at home. How about 7-1 as a home favorite? This is the first real team Duke has taken on all year. This is not NCAA. It's not Northwestern. It's not Kansas. It's North Carolina off a loss. So add it all up, your first official play, North Carolina, minus 19.5. The average game grade, say North Carolina by 22.9. You could probably put a few more points on that for the fact North Carolina is off a loss. Well, let's take a look at another matchup here, your number 2 play, or second play of the week, I should say. We're going to take a look at Louisiana Tech against North Carolina State. So let's line Louisiana Tech up here on the left. And let's line North Carolina State up here on the right. North Carolina State, of course, off that huge win over Clemson last week. Fans charged the field, and there was nothing fluky about it. Look at the yardage. They had a 386 to 214 yard edge. Now, the only thing fluky is this final score. You see 27-21. It was 14-14 in overtime. So if you had the under last week in the North Carolina State Clemson game, my condolences. But let's take a look at this matchup here. NC State, let's see how they do the week after Clemson. Now, normally they lose to Clemson, right? And the week after they play Clemson, let's see what happens. They lost to Louisville, 34-20. Clemson, they lost to Syracuse, 51-41. Played Clemson. They did beat Boston College by 3. You'll have to look in your Phil Steele magazine to see if they covered that game. They lost to Louisville 54-13. They beat Boston College, but there's generally a hangover when NC State is off of Clemson and they're off a big game against Clemson, a big effort, and one that has them thinking ACC title right now. This is not an ACC game, by the way. When you go to Louisiana Tech, thing I want to point out down here, we give you halftime scores of every single game. So Tech actually was dominating North Texas. It was 24-0. Let me do a double check, see if we got the box score up there. Todd will get the box score up there on the Louisiana Tech North Texas game for you by the time you see this video. And you'll see it was 24-0. And then Louisiana Tech basically put it away. I don't even think they threw the ball in the second half. They played very conservative in the second half with that lead, and yet they still got the game. They got the win 24-17. Now, remember the SMU game just 2 games ago. The final play of the game, a tipped Hail Mary pass. See the time? 0-0 left in the game. Roberson hauled it in for a touchdown from 33 yards out. It was a tip pass. By the way, as always, I'd like to thank collegepressbox.com for allowing us to post these game books from their website. These are directly from collegepressbox.com. And when you go down, it gives you the stats, it gives you the players, it gives you the tackles, it gives you all that, drive charts there, starters for the game. And then this is what I do. I go through the play-by-play of every single game. So a lot of times in my write-ups and inside the press box, you'll get a lot of play-by-play in there. I'll say this team went, like on this drive, I might say the team went, let's see where this thing is. Let's find a scoring drive here. Here's one, 78/7 means they went 78 yards and 7 plays for a touchdown. That's what it means in the write-ups and inside the press box when it says 78/7. And that really, you don't even have to go through the play-by-plays like I do, which is very time-consuming. I break it down and tell you exactly what happened in the game and inside the press box each week. So anyway, this gives you all the play-by-plays, gives you halftime stats, quarter stats, all the way out. Once again, big thanks to collegepressbox.com. But as you see, it was a Hail Mary pass that beat them here. Now, the interesting thing to point out, you already know that Louisiana Tech is in a great situation, catching NC State off that big win. Go to your Phil Steele magazine and go to the Louisiana Tech page. Look at how Skip Holtz does as an away dog. How about 15 wins, 8 losses, and 1 tie at Louisiana Tech? Now, he's only been an away dog once this year, and that was against Mississippi State. And let's go back and look at that box score. You can see here that they led that game 21-14 at the half, but it was even better. It was Louisiana Tech winning 34-14 in the fourth quarter against Mississippi State. Mississippi State managed to come back and get the win, pulling it out by 1. So Louisiana Tech has had 2 extremely tough losses this year. They could easily have beaten Mississippi State, 1 play away from beating them. Definitely 1 play away from beating SMU. If that deflected pass doesn't get to another receiver, this team is 4-0 at this point. And they're getting 20 points against NC State. And by the way, did I just mention Mississippi State? Oh, let's see. NC State also traveled to face Mississippi State on the road. And in that game, let's take a look at this. NC State trailed 24-3. They got a garbage touchdown with 1:06 left to pull within 24-10. So mutual opponents say Louisiana Tech. Angles say Louisiana Tech, great underdog. Situation screams Louisiana Tech. Non-conference game for NC State off the biggest win they've ever had under Dave Dorn. And mutual opponents scream Louisiana Tech. So I'm taking Louisiana Tech plus 20 over NC State this week. Great situation. All right, let's go to a MAC game. And if you follow me on Tuesdays, check out a great podcast every Tuesday. It's College Sports Now. I do it with Stephen Hartzell and Wayne Cook each week on Tuesdays. I think 2 years ago when the MAC was fully in play, we went with some MAC plays. We went on like a 6-1 run. Well, I gave them a MAC play this Tuesday, and I'm going to give it to you right now. And we're going to take a look at the Central Michigan against Miami matchup. Now, on paper, Central Michigan comes in 2-2, and Miami of Ohio comes in 1-3. And even the average game grades here have Central and Miami pretty close. If you add in the home field edge for Miami, it's about a pick-em game. That's where Vegas has it. Here's the hidden factors that I like with Miami of Ohio this week. First of all, if you follow Chuck Martin, you know that he basically mails it in these non-conference games. 1-3 is a good year for him in non-conference. And this only happened about 4 or 5 years ago. He used to try to win non-conference games and he'd get to MAC play and be 500. Well, now Chuck Martin has the best record in the MAC over the last 34 games. His teams are 25-9. You can see it here where they lost their non-conference games and then came out with a lot of green. Look at all that green. They win their MAC games. Lose their non-conference games, win their MAC games. Lose their non-conference games, win their MAC games. It's been a thing for them, 25-9 their last 34. So I'm throwing out the stats from these first 4 games, even though they played Minnesota tough. Generally, he mails in the non-conference and puts everything into the MAC games. So it's a really good situation. Look at the last time this happened. They were lost to Cincinnati by 22. They lost to Ohio State by 71. They opened up MAC play. Oh, they beat Buffalo 34-20. I like that. All right, now here's the second factor to point out here, and that is Miami is a great home team. Let's go back and look at their last 11 home games. Beat Long Island, that's 1. Beat Ball State, that's 2. I should say last 10 home games. Beat Tennessee Tech, that's 3. Beat Buffalo, 4. Beat Northern Illinois, 5. Beat Bowling Green, 6. Beat Akron, 7. And over here, they beat Ball State 8, beat Ohio 9, beat Kent 10. They have 10 straight home wins. They're 25-9 in MAC games. And Central Michigan is just 4-15 straight up on the road. They've only won 4 of their last 19 road games. So you have yourself a strong home team against a weak road team. You have Miami, which is ready for the MAC. And let's go take a look at last week's Central Michigan win. And we'll take a look at the box score of this game. They played Florida International. Florida International has a losing record so far this year. Central Michigan trailed this thing 27-10 in the fourth quarter. They brought Richardson off the bench. Richardson led 3 touchdown drives, including one with 1:18 left, and they pulled out a 31-27 win. Now, if you're a Central fan, you were pretty happy that Jacob Sermon was your quarterback, the Washington State transfer, but now there's question marks with the quarterback situation. So you've got a questionable quarterback situation. Sermon was just 14-26 last week, and the offense was going nowhere. Daniel Richardson's not the answer. I think Sermon's a better quarterback there, but Richardson was the answer against FIU. He's a different type of quarterback. Richardson's short. Sermon is more of a prototypical QB, completely different, and maybe that caught FIU by surprise. It won't catch Miami by surprise. Nothing catches Chuck Martin by surprise. So add it all up. You got Miami, pick 'em against Central Michigan. My number 3 play this week, Miami of Ohio, pick 'em against Central Michigan. All right, I'm going to admit, last week I made a mistake here on the Phil Steele Plus tour. I took UMass on the road against Coastal Carolina. The negative thing there, being on the road for starters, they lost to Pitt already 51-7. And the second thing is Coastal Carolina has an explosive offense. Once they get rolling, they're going to keep rolling. Unfortunately, in that game against Buffalo, they threw a damn interception in the end zone when they could have gone up ahead of the spread, but yeah, that's for another day. Anyway, so you had Coastal Carolina at home. They've been blowing teams out at home, and I used UMass just because I think UMass is very underrated this year. So that was a mistake on my part. I freely admit it. But no mistake this week. I like UMass plus the points over Toledo. I pointed out the last 2 Phil Steele Plus stores that last year was just unusually bad circumstances for them. They're a much improved team. They showed that against Boston College. Boston College, they only lost to by 17 at home. Eastern Michigan, they lost to by 14. They outgained Eastern Michigan 519-507. All right, we're back in our comfort zone. We're back at home. That's a good thing. Now, is Toledo going to take this game seriously? Well, guess what? Last year, the MAC champion was Ball State. Toledo last week was facing the MAC champ in their division on the road, must-win game if you're going to win the MAC. They go there. Ball State actually had the yardage edge at the half. You know, Ball State had a 14-7 first down edge at the half. We do have the box score up there. Let's go check that out. Let's go check the halftime. Oh, unfortunately, this Genius Sports, when they put it up, they have first quarter stats. As you see in the first quarter, Ball State had a 6-1 first down edge, yet Toledo led. How did Toledo lead that game? Well, I think it was 2 big plays is what it was for Toledo. Let's go back and take a look at the top up here. They got a 69-yard TD pass and a 70-yard touchdown run. That's basically all they did in the first half, those 2 big plays. That was 139 of their yards. 14-7 first downs, Ball State, but Ball State trailed 14-9 at the half. And Toledo was able to win 22-12. Now, that was a pretty big game and a pretty big win, and it was on the road. Now they're thinking MAC championship, right? You've got Northern Illinois, and then that's a division rival, Central Michigan, division rival, Western Michigan, division rival, Eastern Michigan, division rival. So this is between 5 MAC West games. This is called a sandwich game for them. Now let's take a look at Toledo's offense. Toledo's offense has not been great. Yeah, they've got some yards here, but points against FBS teams, they got 29 against Notre Dame, they got 6 here, and they got 22 here. So they've got 57 points in FBS games. That's not Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina puts points on the board. Toledo's averaging 19 points per game in FBS games. This is an FBS game. So you've got a low-scoring offense in a massive sandwich situation against a very underrated UMass team, which is in a spot where I'm not using them on the road. Don't worry, I'm not going to use them at Florida State or at Liberty, but I like them at home. And the average game grades say Toledo 97.5, UMass 75.8, so that's 22. You add in the home field edge, add in a little bit for that sandwich situation. You're talking about Toledo by about 18 points. Toledo's a 27-point favorite here. UMass didn't lose to Boston College by 27 at home. So I like UMass plus 27 over Toledo in this one. And don't worry, I'm not going to use UMass on the road on Phil Steele Plus anymore this year. All right, let's take a look at South Carolina and Troy. Now, interesting this morning, I'm looking at the numbers, the lines. We get a service that gives us the lines from all the different casinos. South Carolina's actually dropped to a 6.5-point favorite, so they're laying less than a touchdown today. I like that. It's a good situation to be in. We're going to put South Carolina on the right, and we're going to put Troy on the left. Now, you guys know what I think of Troy. Troy's a team that when they play a lesser team and they win the game, they win big. I liked them against ULM here on the tour because of that, but they didn't even win the doggone game, so they didn't have the opportunity to win big. When they win big. But when they lose, they don't. And the thing about Troy, you go back, open up your Phil Steele magazine, take a look at Chip Lindsey, and take a look at Away Dog. Go ahead, I'll give you a minute. Flip to your Phil Steele magazine. All right, Chip Lindsey, Away Dog. 1-5. 1-5 as an away dog for Chip Lindsey. He hasn't been an away dog this year. You see it in the magazine. You know that this is not a good situation for Troy. Troy is a good bully, but they're not great as an away dog. All right, let's take a look at the average game grade. South Carolina comes in with a 99.5 average game grade. Not overwhelming, number 63 in the country. Troy is an 89.9. Now you add in the home field edge. And South Carolina is an SEC school, so they've got more than a standard three-point edge. My average game grades have South Carolina winning this game by 13.9, or basically by 2 touchdowns. How has South Carolina fared against Troy? Well, I'm looking it up just because I haven't done a lot of these lookups for you, but these last 24 years matchups are available on every one. You just click down here on the team name, and the last 24 years matchups comes up. South Carolina's won by 10, 25, and 45 points in their 3 meetings. So each of their wins over Troy, they're 3-0, have come by more than 6.5 points. So you got to like all that. Now, South Carolina is off 2 losses. So you say it's an SEC sandwich. It is not an SEC sandwich for South Carolina. First of all, unlike Toledo, which is happy and now protecting their big lead, South Carolina's 0-2 in the SEC. Doesn't matter whether you win an SEC game or not. They're not going to contend for the SEC East. However, they need to win games. Look at the rest of their schedule. They play at Tennessee. They'll be a dog. They play Vanderbilt. They will be favored over Vanderbilt. They'll be an underdog at A&M, an underdog versus Florida, an underdog at Missouri, an underdog versus Auburn, an underdog versus Clemson. They need to win this game, and they need to beat Vanderbilt, and they need to pull off 2 upsets. But this game is a game they have to have, or else they potentially could be 3-9 this year, and that's no good. So you will have a focused South Carolina here. This is not a sandwich situation, even though this is technically between 2 SEC games. And you have a Troy team that was very disappointing in their last game. I'm not sure how you lose to ULM 29-16, but they did. and that's why their average game grades is down where it is. So you add all this up, you have a South Carolina team that's taken on a much tougher schedule. I mean, Troy so far, their toughest opponent is Liberty. Meanwhile, South Carolina has already played Georgia, the best team in the country in my average game grades, and they've already played Kentucky. They played a good East Carolina on the road and came out with the win. So add it all up. I like South Carolina minus 6.5 over Troy, and that is your fifth play this week. And your final FBS play. I will have some more FBS for you at the end of this. But let's move a little bit to the FCS for today. We're going to take a look at two games. And they're two games which are priced very good because they're both priced right around Pick'em, which is attractive. The first one we're going to line up is a game I'm sure you guys were focusing on all week. It's Duquesne against Merrimack. Yeah, I know it. You were. It's been the big thing around the water cooler this week. Who's going to win this big game? But let's delve into this Duquesne versus Merrimack game a little bit closer. We'll get Duquesne on the left. Merrimack is the home team. They're on the right. And just looking at this, you got Merrimack at 3-1. Duquesne is just 2-1. Merrimack is a 2-point favorite. Here's the things I like. Now, first of all, who is Merrimack, you're wondering? Well, if you click here under the forecast, and this is available on every single FCS team, this gives you a complete write-up on the team. It tells you who the team is. It tells you what their offense is like, quarterback, all that stuff, defense, special teams, and then a wrap-up for the year. Well, Merrimack was a Division II school from 1997 to 2018. They moved up to FCS in 2019. They went 6-5 their first year, but only 3 of those wins came against FCS teams. So if you look at their record, since moving up to FCS, Merrimack is just 5-10. And already this year, they banged one win over a non-FCS team here. They did have an impressive win against Holy Cross. I'll give you that. Holy Cross is a really good team. They lost to Maine on the road, and they beat a weak Delaware State team 47-10. Meanwhile, we take a look over here at Duquesne. They got waxed by TCU. TCU is much better than their record right now. They played Ohio on the road, and they beat the Bobcats. They beat a MAC team on the road 28-26, had the yardage edge in the game, outrushed them 167-139, so they played pretty good. Now, they did take on a weak foe last week in Virginia Lynchburg, but they won and won big. See if we got the individual player stats. There you go. Todd did update them. So their quarterback hitting 62% with a 1-1 ratio, but they're a team that likes to run the ball. Last year, they were right there for the championship of the Northeastern Conference, and they're the favorite, one of the favorites to win the Northeastern Conference this year. They won all 4 games, and they played Sacred Heart. By the way, when you go here to the FCS team pages right here, if you click on here, the Northeast, it's not updated yet. Let me see if it's updated. Todd might have got that updated. He did not get it updated yet, but let's click on, let's say, the Colonial. This tells you who's favored to win the conference. This gives you your all-conference players prior to the year. This gives you your ranking for the conference, your preseason polls. So you got your preseason polls. You've got your teams. If you want to go back and look at Merrimack and see the teams they were playing, in 2018, they played Bloomsburg, Assumption, Bentley, New Haven, Long Island, Stonehill, St. Anselm, American International, Pace, and South Carolina, Southern Connecticut State. And over here on the left, we have a Duquesne team that's been in the Northeastern Conference and has been playing well. Almost won the championship last year, came up just short against Sacred Heart. So you've got a very good Duquesne team, an established team, one that's going to contend for the conference title. Merrimack is in that conference, but they're not eligible for the title yet. I believe they become eligible next year. And as mentioned, they're 5-10 against the FCS. And while they're 3-1 and plus 199 yards per game, they're only playing to an average game grade of 69.3. These guys are playing to an average game grade of 77.2. Basically, you got Duquesne, I feel the better team. They have played TCU in Ohio, but I feel they're the better team, and they're actually getting points. So I'm going to take Duquesne to win this one outright as the underdog, and that's your first FCS play for the week. Your second one we're going to look at is Fordham against Lafayette. And we're going to put Fordham on the left because they are the visitor, and we are going to put Lafayette on the right because they are the home team. All right, we do that, and we are locked and loaded here. Fordham lost to Nebraska. Now, Monmouth is a very good team. They lost to them by 3. They lost to Florida Atlantic. All right, so Florida Atlantic is going to be a contender in CUSA. Nebraska is a Big Ten team, and then they beat Stony Brook last week, 35-14. Over here, Lafayette lost to Air Force. That's not a bad game, only losing Air Force by 21. But then they lost to William and Mary by 21. They lost to New Hampshire by 6, and last week they beat Penn. So they are just 1-3 on the year. Now, this is my computer pick. It jumped out to me computer-wise because my computer actually forecast Fordham to win the game 29-19. The average game grades, and once again, the average game grades take into account the opponent, the yards, everything. The average game grades has them at 74.5 versus 65.3. Now, if you add in a 3-point home edge over here, that'd be 68, so it still would be Fordham by 6. But I want to show you why you don't necessarily need a 3-point home edge here for Lafayette. And it's the fact they're just 8-22 straight up at home. It's not like they're great at home. They're 1-1 this year. They were 2-0 last year, but they lost to Sacred Heart. They lost to Penn. Got a couple wins there. Lost to Colgate, so they had a losing record at home. Loss, win, loss, loss, loss. 1-4 at home that year. Loss, loss. I could go back, but I did it earlier. 8-22 is their straight-up record at home. So I would even lessen that home field edge. It's not much of a home field edge, and let's face it, FCS is not playing for 60,000 rabid fans at home. So you've got a Fordham team that my computer likes to win by 10, that the average game grades has them by 7, maybe 8 if you lessen the home edge, and the games pick them. So I'm going to take Fordham, pick them over Lafayette as your second FCS play. And by the way, this gives you the history on the FCS. Let's click on this. Fordham, all the way back to 2009. You could see every game, color-coded green and red. And the beautiful thing is we were able to incorporate the average game grades here in 2018. Now let's take a quick look here at Fordham, by the way, under the forecast. You will find that Joe Moorhead, you know him, he's now the offense coordinator at Oregon, was the head coach here and got him to the playoffs. And then they had another head coach, and they've struggled. And then they got rid of that coach, and Joe Conlon stepped in. And they went 2-9 his first year, but they have been much better after that. They had 12 starters back. They got to 3-4. They went 2-1 in the spring. So this is really a third or fourth year, probably more like a third year for a new head coach. That's usually when they hit their stride. And let's also take a look here. One thing I looked at today on the FCS team pages for Fordham is the all-conference team. Let's go take a look at Fordham. Fordham. See if we can find them here. Fordham. There they are. Here is the all-conference team for the Patriot. This is interesting. All-conference team, quarterback, Fordham. Running back, Fordham. Running back, Fordham. Wide receiver, Fordham. Wide receiver, Fordham. I think they have a good offense. And the offensive line's a veteran group as well. So this is a good Fordham team. We're taking them, pick them against Lafayette. All right, let's move on to the NFL. Show you how to use the NFL team pages. I always like the NFL with the logos. So look at these logos. It's pretty neat. You can pick on your teams. Carolina's a team that delivered for us week 1. I think Carolina's an underrated team this year. I thought that the acquisition of Sam Darnold, if I was choosing quarterbacks, you had the 3 rookie quarterbacks and Sam Darnold all available, I would have taken Sam Darnold this year. So I think they got a great benefit in that trade with the Jets. Darnold now, with a better supporting cast, has a 3-1 ratio, is hitting 68% of his passes. They don't have Christian McCaffrey this week. Yes, that is true. But they didn't have Christian McCaffrey a good portion last year. If you look here, you got the stats for every single game. And all you have to do to get to those, you just click on individual player stats. If you're a fantasy player, you got to love this. You've got the stats on every game for every player in the NFL. You can see how they do against certain teams. But as you see, McCaffrey was not there the majority of the year last year. I point that out because Matt Rule still did extremely well as an away dog. Now, this is, let me show you this right here. This is my, I have a workbook for the NFL. Gives you the schedule. You can fill in the lines. Gives you the spread records. We've got these type of things in the magazine, but look how in-depth they go. Versus division, versus non-division, favorite, underdog. Gives you over-unders over here. Last 5 years records. And that's what we're going to hone in here right now, is these last year as an away dog. Now, they didn't have McCaffrey for a bunch of these games, all right? They lost to Tampa Bay in the first one, but the Chargers, +6, win the game outright. Atlanta, +2.5, win the game outright. New Orleans, +7, covered the game. And that was a pretty good Saints team. At Kansas City, the explosive Kansas City Chiefs, +10, they lose by 2. At Minnesota, Desperate Minnesota needed a win. +3, they lose by 1. Green Bay +8.5, they lost by 8. At Washington +1, they win. 7-0 as an away dog. This year they have not been an away dog. This is their first in the situation. So Matt Rule, 7-0 as an away dog, and the majority of those are without McCaffrey. And now he's got a good quarterback in Sam Darnold. They've got the defense that's playing great. And the other thing I want to point out in the NFL, if you go to our NFL site right here, just click on NFL. Go under offense, defense versus opponent averages. Carolina is gaining 76 yards above what their opponent's average. Their defense is holding foes to 112 yards below what opponent's average. You add those two together, that's the best in the NFL right now. Give an example. Look at this. The LA Rams, who I perceive as the best team in the NFL right now, probably, especially with their win over Tampa last week. They're only plus 19 yards on offense and minus 103 yards on defense. So that's a little surprising. Now, Dallas is good. They're plus 18.5, minus 14. The defense is a different question. And I'll line up Dallas here on the right, by the way, just to show you these things a little more in depth. And we'll line up Carolina here on the left. Oops, I want to go to NFL team pages. Sorry about that. Let's get to Carolina. We're going to line up Carolina on the left. You see their defense? They have held their opponents to 183 below, 159 below, and the Jets was an average game. They're giving up 191 yards per game. Dallas is giving up 402 yards per game. Look at a red over here. Dallas is giving up 332 yards per game passing, 68% completions. Carolina much better in that respect. So you can see where those numbers are generated from. Carolina's plus 77, plus 113. They are plus 81, minus 15. Carolina, number one in the NFL in those categories. And great away dog. Dallas, by the way, 2-10-1 against the spread as a home favorite. So add it all up. I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers. Oh, one thing I also didn't mention here, which I forgot. You know that Dallas is actually 0-8 straight up, playing at home the day after a Monday night game, the week after a Monday night game. They're off a Monday night divisional game. They got another divisional game on deck. And they're off a short week. They just played on Monday. Carolina, meanwhile, they played on Thursday. They have extra time to prepare for this game. So a great away dog versus a poor home favorite, playing better this year. I like Carolina plus 4.5 over Dallas. All right, before I get to my final figures, I think you're going to like these things I throw at you at the end. I do want to remind you, if you want any of this stuff, just go to the philsteele.com store right here. If you want to get Phil Steele Plus for the year, it's right here. At Phil Steele Plus Access, $69, basically $10 a month, like $2 a week. You guys can afford that. That's less than a price of a beer per week, and you can get these Phil Steele Plus in your hands all the way through the Super Bowl. If you just want the FCS, become an FCS expert, it's even cheaper, $29. Just go to the store right there. And if you do want my workbook right here, the Phil Steele workbook, NFL workbook, you just click on that. The workbook is $20.50 with the shipping. Turns out to be $28, and you have all that information that I showed you in your hands for every single team. So make sure you check those out and get those. Now let's do a fast facts here, things you didn't know and things you might want to know about this week's games. Let's go to the FBS. We'll click on the FBS team pages, click on some teams here. Washington is an underdog this week to Oregon State. I thought I would point that out. Let's go to the Pac-12. Take a look at Washington. And the thing I want to point out here, come down here. When you click on the opponent, the last 24 years matchups pop up at your fingertips. There we go. Green here means that the team won the game. So you don't even have to look at the scores. You can tell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They've won 9 in a row against Oregon State, and they're the underdog. By the way, if you clicked on Oregon State and looked at theirs, naturally when you click on it, you would see the red right there. So you've got, and by the way, look at this as well. The visitor, which Washington is this week, this tells you the home team, if this is colored red, that means the home team lost against the spread. The visitor has actually covered 6 in a row. I didn't even know that. I'm just looking at that now. So you got that at your fingertips. The visitors covered 6 in a row in the series. And that's the same over here because at home, the word win means the home team won the game. The red means that the visitor covered. If it's green, the home team covered the game. So that's how you use that. Out here, this is the spread. If it's green, that means that Oregon State covered the game. As you see, they're red here. If it's red, that means that Washington covered the game. So you got all that, and that's how you use that. But I thought it was pretty interesting that Washington's a dog in that game, despite the series dominance. With Mississippi, Alabama, you might find this interesting. We're going to put Mississippi on the left, Bama on the right, and put Mississippi here. The Mississippi Rebels, so far this year, are playing to an average game grade. And yes, the strength of schedule is accounted for, which just tells you how dominant they've been. They're plus 281 yards per game. 120.2 is their average game grade right now. Alabama was actually outgained by Florida. So that's, and you look at their average game grade this year, it's 118.7. Right now, Mississippi's actually playing to an average game grade better than Alabama. Remember, the average game grades have no starting point. It doesn't start with Alabama at one level or Mississippi at one level. It just says, here's the stats, here's the opponent, how good was that game? So that's pretty interesting, I think, when you've got a 14.5-point dog in Ole Miss. We take a look at Florida State, Syracuse real quick, and this is one of those series history things. Florida State is a small favorite in this game, and they are a desperate team at 0-4. They absolutely have to win this game. If you click on the series history, Florida State's absolutely dominated. This takes you back the last 24 years, but Florida State now in this series is 11-1. Their average win is by 26 points per game, and they're a perfect 6-0 against us, 6-0 straight up, 5-1 ATS at home. So that's another series dominant, cheap price type of thing. And finally, we're going to wrap it up taking a look at Clemson and Boston College. And a couple things I want to point out to you about this game. Now, one of them is not from Phil Steele Plus, but I'm going to give you some knowledge on Boston College that you probably didn't know. Well, if you read the magazine, you probably do know it, but I don't know if you know how they've been playing this year. Anyway, you have a Clemson team laying over 2 touchdowns at home. Let's click on that. Now, yeah, Clemson got 21 points last week. They were outgained 386 to 214. Look at how they're doing against FBS teams so far this year. 180, 284, and 214. So they're averaging about 220 yards per game. In ACC play, they're averaging 197 yards per game. And this 21 is skewed because they only had 14 points at the end of regulation. So in regulation, against FBS teams, they have scored 3, 14, and 14. So they're averaging 10.3 points per game, and they're laying 14. Now, the average game grades do say they're playing pretty well. They've had a tougher schedule than Boston College has. BC delivered for me last week, and it was a very enjoyable game. But here's the one thing I wanted to point out to you about BC, and I've used this on the radio shows, but you guys probably don't listen to all the radio shows I do during the week, so I thought I'd throw it out here. Last year, I thought one of the most underperforming units, maybe the most underperforming unit in college football, was Boston College's offensive line. Because when I looked at it in the preseason, I saw 4 NFL caliber offensive linemen. And they had a brand new offense, yes. They didn't have spring. They didn't have a lot of fall. They were incorporating a new offense. But they really struggled. I'm talking about 102 yards per game rush, 3.1 yards per carry, and how about 28 sacks? For 4 NFL guys on the offensive line, you should never have numbers like that. Now, they've had the spring. They've had all year to install the offense. And guess what? They are playing the 4 NFL caliber offensive linemen. 223 yards per game, 5.5 yards per carry. Check out this sack total. I didn't notice it until I was going through the game for this week. And that's the thing I do. I line up one team on the left, one team on the right, and you all of a sudden the stat will just jump out at you. 1 sack. 1.1% sacks. And it's not like Dennis Grosel and Phil Jerkovic are the most mobile quarterbacks in the world. So this is offensive line's playing great. Remember, Clemson has lost 2 defensive linemen, Tyler Davis, and they just lost Brian Breezy, one of my cover boys off the magazine, gone for the year. So they've lost 2 of their top defensive linemen. They had my number 1 rated defensive line coming in, but I think BC's offensive line could neutralize what is Clemson's strength. So just thought I'd throw those in. Those are all extra points. None of those are official plays. We got 8 official plays this week. Let's go 8-0 this week. Let's have a big winning week, and I'll talk to you next week. I'll be back with all the information, show you how to use the Phil Steele Plus, and thank you for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour with me today.